let's not lie to ourselves. Anime? It's kinda fucking weird. Relatively speaking, as an anime fan, I'm still quite new. As of writing this video, I've watched around 20 different animes within the span of 3 years. As far as I know, I think I've always known about anime. At the very least, I've known the basics. Dragon Ball Z and Naruto for years were the only real anime that I knew about, but even then, I've never had any interest in them, and I stuck to most American cartoons throughout my childhood. When I was younger, I felt like that was pretty common, yet apparently my brother watched Dragon Ball when he was a kid, so what do I know? Whenever I meet somebody who watches anime, one of the first questions that comes out of my mouth is, "Oh, what was your first show?" Which is unrelated to the topic of this video, but the next question is always, "Oh, how'd you get into it?" I just like finding out how people get into the medium, and with the new direction I'm taking this channel, I think now's as good a time as ever to share the story of how I first got into anime. But that's probably not going to be long enough to fill out this video, so at the end I'll go through a quick run through of all the anime I watched and how I would rank them. It all started a few years back, when I was around 13. Excuse me, someone let in too much noir. Anyways, I was in desperate need of money for a school trip to Washington, D.C. I had family that worked for a company that made little plastic units for testing different appliances, and I was lucky enough for that family member to give me the opportunity of assembling those test units at home. Believe it or not, repeating the process of making these was extremely fucking boring, and I needed something to binge, and that's when my saving grace arrived. My sister had recommended that I watched Fairy Tail, so I chose to watch My Hero Academia. I ended up watching it dubbed while working on the test units, and man, let me tell you, I loved the show, and I thought Deku was super relatable. And if you ever wanted to know what kind of kid I was at 13, that should be all you need to know. I ended up getting caught up and switching to the sub in Season 2, but this is where our story encounters a time skip. Even after watching My Hero, I didn't have much interest in anime, so we now jump 3 years into the future, my sophomore year of high school, where I met a group of people who would become my closest friends. But this story only really involves one of them. You see, in my sophomore year, I was part of my school student body, meaning I had to attend a lot of after-school events. Unfortunately, my home was a 30-minute drive away from campus, and both my parents had work. So on days with after-school events, I needed a place to chill until the event started, and one of my friends was nice enough to let me hang at his place while waiting. Little did I know, this was all part of a year-long plan to submerge me into the same cesspool he himself had fallen victim to. We typically play Smash or watch funny videos while hanging out, until one day he and one of his other friends turned on his PS4 and began playing a small, super niche game that I don't think any of you have heard of.
Here comes a mighty warrior!
This routine repeated for nearly 8 months, with him asking every time if I had any interest in trying the game, until finally I just caved. He began to teach me the game while also explaining the lore of some of the characters, and I could tell my interest in the series was slowly rising, but I had heard rumors that Dragon Ball Z was really long, and I didn't have the time to watch something that long, so I'd come to the conclusion that I'd probably never end up watching Dragon Ball, but I did begin to want to play fighters on my own without him suggesting it. During a conversation with said friend, I'd let it slip that I had no plans of watching something as long as Dragon Ball Z, and that I really wish there was a shorter version. The smile that had crept over his face still sends a shiver down my spine to this day, as the sentence echoed out around us. "Have you heard of Dragon Ball Z Kai?" And that's when I knew my fate had been sealed. And thus I had started my third anime, Dragon Ball Z Kai, and let me tell you, I was obsessed. I can't think of a single character in the show I don't like, and the fights, oh man, the hype they give you. And once I finished Kai, he came back to me and said we should watch his other favorite show together. And after we finished that, we started another one. And then another. And then another. And another. And another. My room slowly began to collect anime merch. I began picking up anime shirts. I played a JRPG other than Pokemon. It was over. I had become an anime fan. Which is just another thing to add to my list of nerd traits, so that's fun. Like I said earlier, this story was pretty short, and I don't feel like uploading a 3-minute video to the channel, so to give you all a better understanding of who I am and my taste in anime, let me go over the ones I've watched and put them in everybody's favorite. Drumroll please. Tier list. No, not that one. Not that one. Starting off, I genuinely don't think I've watched any F tier animes, so we're just gonna kinda ignore this one, but I've definitely watched a D tier. Normally, I wouldn't split a show into seasons, but this is the exception I'll make. Because the absolute difference between One Punch Man's first and second season is so drastic, I genuinely can't consider them the same show. Most comment on the animation switch, but even the plot didn't interest me after the first season. It genuinely hurt me to watch a show as good as One Punch Man fall off so hard. And honestly, that's really my only D tier. Everything else from here on out are shows I enjoyed watching. Starting off on our C tiers, we have Gamers, and this is where I actually have to admit something to you all. I lied to all of you in my last video. Gamers was actually my first rom-com, but I didn't finish it, so it just doesn't count. Anyways, Gamers, super fun show. The only reason I stopped watching was because the main plot kind of wrapped itself up before the season ended, and it was just further unnecessary rom-com drama. But like I said, it's a fun show. Nice to binge if you're ever just bored someday, especially if you like video game references. Following that's going to be Dragon Ball Super, and man, the difference between Z and Super is dramatic. I don't think Dragon Ball Super is bad, but it's definitely not great. Looking back at the Super manga just makes me more disappointed, as some of the cut content, especially during the Goku Black arc, would have been way better than what we actually got. Our last show for C tier, and I'm breaking my no splitting shows rule again. But it's for a good reason, I swear. Because let's be honest, how in the world are you supposed to categorize all the JoJo parts together? Part 1 of JoJo isn't bad, but it's definitely not as entertaining as the rest. But Part 1 also isn't very long, which doesn't give us much time to get attached to Jonathan before he... you know. Anyways, now we get to start B tier, where our first show is going to be Beastars. Beastars is an interesting show, to say the least. But it also feels like it's dipping itself into too many genres. I've only seen season 1, but even the tonal whiplash the show gives you kinda irritated me. The opening is an absolute banger though. Both Part 2 and 3 of JoJo end up falling here, and it's only really because of how good Part 4 and 5 are. It's hard to explain, but the fights and characters in Parts 2 and 3 entertain me less than the later JoJo cast. That isn't to say they're bad. Joseph, Jotaro, and Kakyoin are some of my favorite characters, and Part 3 begins the development of crazy-ass stands, which is probably my favorite part of JoJo. This is probably going to be my first hot take on this list, and possibly even my only one. I think Jujutsu Kaisen is a B-tier show, and it's only because of the second core. I absolutely love the first half of the show, but the second half feels so comparatively slow that it dropped my ranking of the show pretty heavily. That said, the second half does feature the Itadori and Todo bromance, which is absolutely peak writing, genuinely the best characters in the fucking show. And the last fight scene is pretty bangin'. That wraps up B tier, and admittedly my A tier is going to be my longest section, so buckle in, I'm going to try to speed through this. One Punch Man Season 1. It's funny, the animation is fucking amazing, the story is engaging, and my boy Moomin Rider gets a fucking peak episode. Kill la Kill. I'm in love with Trigger's animation style, and I don't think I've ever laughed so hard during fight scenes. It's a perfect example of how to keep comedy during fight scenes without taking away from either aspect. Looking at you, Fire Force. Komi can't communicate. For those of you familiar with my last video, this shouldn't be a surprise. I go over it in detail there, so go check that out, but I will admit, I may be letting the manga affect my judgment here. Naruto. I'm actually nowhere near finished with this show, but I definitely think it's an A tier already. I'm currently in the Shonen Finals, and goddamn this shit good. Cowboy Bebop. I love the aesthetic of this show, but there is a few boring episodes that drag the experience down. Other than that, the show's amazing and has one of the best intros I've ever heard. Goblin Slayer. Gritty fantasy is fucking amazing, and I love the Dungeons and Dragons references, and blah blah, I feel like I'm obligated to make a first episode joke here. Soul Eater. I have an odd fascination with scythes being used as weapons, so this was a must-watch for me. It's definitely got its problems, but I still absolutely love it, and the characters are all written nearly perfectly. JoJo Part 5. Truth be told, I think I like this part for just how batshit insane it is. There is literally never a dull moment because something always fucking insane is happening. This was also the show my friends and I started to be able to point out whenever Bakugo's Japanese VA was cast as a character. Don't know why I decided to mention that here, but I just think it's funny. We've got an entire list now. Finally, My Hero. I think My Hero is a great concept, and even with its less than stellar arcs, looking at you, provisional license exam, fights in the show are top tier, and the characters that do get expanded upon get that expansion in glorious ways. My best example would probably be Kirishima during his Red Riot Unbreakable upgrade. I love that scene so much. Besides that, I like how the show looks. I like the openings, I like the characters. I genuinely think it's an A tier show. And here's S tier. I'll try to take my time with these ones to fully explain myself. Demon Slayer. I'll be honest, this one is mostly animation. Some people don't like the hype, and that's completely understandable. However, I fucking love feeling hyped, and Demon Slayer is what I think peak hype actually looks like. Besides that, I don't dislike any of the characters, my worst feeling being neutral to only a few of them. The story is pretty simple, and both the Mugen arc and Entertainment arc experienced a very similar plot progression, but I genuinely couldn't care less because look at that shit, oh my god. FLCL. I don't know how to explain why I like this show. I don't know how to explain this show. This is a 6-episode, 2-hour-long fever dream, and I love every moment of it. If you want to experience drugs without the drugs, just take 2 hours out of your day to watch this show. Honestly, I'm unsure if you'd be able to understand this show more or less while high. Just fucking go watch it with your buddies. You won't regret it. Mob Psycho. This falls into a very similar category to Demon Slayer. The majority of my entertainment coming from hype, but it's also got a much more engaging story in my opinion. It mixes both shonen and a coming-of-age story really well, and I just think it's an absolute delight to watch. JoJo Part 4. I genuinely think this is peak JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and no, I have not finished Part 6 through 8, admittedly. The stands in this part are batshit crazy, which I've already expressed how much I like that, and while the first half does kinda slog a bit, once Yoshikage Kira is introduced, the story is absolutely fucking amazing. It's also the JoJo part with either the least or most main character deaths, depending on what you consider an official character death in JoJo. So, that's neat. And now we reach my final tier, which is just my top 3. These 3 are my absolute favorite shows of all time, beating even some of my top Western shows. For those of you who watched my last video, this shouldn't come as much of a surprise, but in 3rd place is Kaguya-sama Love is War. I won't go too into why I love this show so much, since you can literally just go watch my last video. Please go do that if you haven't already. But the TLDR is, the characters are great, the show's funny, and it genuinely hit me with some good emotional moments. In 2nd place, also shouldn't be too much of a surprise considering my channel, it's Dragon Ball Z, specifically Kai. There's a reason the characters of Dragon Ball are so iconic. They aren't the most developed characters, but they still do change the world around them. I think the world of Dragon Ball is fascinating, the fights are amazing, and the levels of hype it gives me is genuinely fucking insane. It'd be a disservice if I didn't place this show in my top 3. And we finally get to our last one, my top anime of all time. And with so many options, there's so many possibilities on what this last show could be. And it's with pride that I tell you that I am a basic-ass bitch, baby, hell yeah! Fullmetal Alchemist is my favorite show of all time. I love every character, I love every fight, I love the dub voices, I love the sub voices. It's not perfect. It doesn't have Demon Slayer hype, it doesn't hit Kaguya levels of character attachment, but it does everything so well that I feel like I can call this show genuinely flawless. As of writing this script, I have been so ungodly tempted to watch the show for a 3rd time. I absolutely love how the special effects and alchemy looks. The show balances its dark, serious, and funny moments fabulously, and the fact that all the homunculi die ironic deaths? Beautiful, amazing, creative masterpiece. So, that's it. I think I ended up spending more time on the tier list than the actual story this video was based on, so, whoops. That aside though, I think I've been able to establish who I am and what my tastes are in this weird-ass anime community. For those of you who have been paying attention to my channel over the past year, you may have seen a video where I discuss my possible departure from Minecraft content, depending on how the next 3 videos of mine turned out. And I personally absolutely loved how all 3 of these turned out, and it's clear you all did too. So I think this is where we're headed. I've already got some more ideas in the pipeline, some keeping similar vibes but exiting the realm of anime, and of course some keeping with the vibe we've got going right now. I'm gonna take this time to plug while I still can. If you still like my gaming content, you can check out my Twitch. I stream Phoenix Wright with the boys every Monday, and I've got some new ideas I want to try out soon, such as a Pokemon Nuzlocke. You can also check out my friends and I's Discord server where you can just hang out or pester me about what anime or game I should review next. Speaking of which, I've got a lot of shit left on my list, and it keeps growing every day. But thanks to y'all, I can now spend my days watching people beat the shit out of each other or studying anime tits. Truly, peak working conditions.